Good morning, folks. My name is Lior. Allay. I'm one of the Going Beyond the Lens co-founders, and one of our other teammates, Roarie, will be joining us in just a moment. You got to hear them speak with our other co-founder, Bunny Luna, earlier this week on Tuesday, and we are getting amped up for our free community art share on Saturday. So we thought it would be a good idea to give you some thoughts around what to expect and, why are we doing this? Why are we even spending our time, gathering in this way? And sort of like, what is the function of that? We're going to talk a little bit about our intention. Roarie should be popping on any second.
Good morning.
Morning.
I wonder if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Sweet. All right. How are you doing this morning?
Well, it's a snow day, so anytime it's a snow day, it's a little kooky. But yeah, did you guys get snow down there?
We just got a bunch of ice. I tried to walk downstairs on the back deck and discovered that ice is slippery.
I see that.
How does this science work? I don't appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, good thing that our event this Saturday is inside, so it doesn't matter how much snow happens, as long as you have Wi-Fi, we'll be able to be together.
Yeah, not only is it inside, but it's also warm, and science doesn't exist there.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Yeah, so what are you feeling like you're most excited with this? Our topic is self-love this month. What excites you the most about that topic?
So to preface, I'm working on a work-related project that deals with representation, and something that's come up a lot in conversation specifically because of that project, for me, correlates directly with self-love. Because, as an example, when I was younger, this did not exist. And what I mean by this is the way that I live authentically within my body and the androgynous space that I take up now, I did not have a role model. There was no one for me to look up to and go, oh, I see myself in the world.
Right, like that's not
so. Yeah. And creating the body of work that I do, which for me, self-love manifests in two ways. I wanted a nude female form to appear in a not sexual context, so to detach the idea that all forms of nudity related to the female form was sexual, and that's radical self-love to me, to continually make work that makes that statement. And also, when I do androgynous work or gender bending work, create images that younger folks or even older folks that are discovering can then see themselves in and go, oh, there is space in the world. And that's also, to me, radical self-love.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like a time travel version of self-love, because it's like it's healing for you to experience the representation now, but it's also healing to imagine that the next generation coming forward gets to witness that freedom and therefore be by that many degrees freer themselves just at the starting point, like you and I, our generation and older as well, really had to push back against like so much social, like circling that happens where there's so much exclusion and what is and is not allowed to be shown, what is and is not allowed to be considered beautiful. And it really impacts the mental health of the people that exist in that society when things are controlled in that way. And you aren't a member of the inner circle, whatever it is that year or that millennia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, in my mind, I always look back to, so it was 1959, I believe, when Stonewall riots were happening, and being gay stereotyped in these two formats. If you were a woman and you appeared wearing these stereotypical things, or you're a man and you appeared in these stereotypical ideas or concepts, then you were deemed gay and therefore was illegal and arrestable. And now, today, I made a living off of gender bending. It's such a radical idea to me, but it also again reinforces for me that many years of work, which to Bunny's point, process, reveals, radical self-love, but also that is the self-love, is doing the work and showing up for many years so that eventually future generations do get to benefit. And for me, the benefit now is the healing process.
Totally.
So I like that you brought that.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
There's so many ways in which I'm like excited for these times, because I feel like all of a sudden people have this option. I did an interview with Queers for a Cause, which is a local New York City charity that tries to raise money for LGBT youth and provide services around mental health and services around coming out and getting gender affirmation resources, whatever that looks like. And in the interview, the owner was talking about like why they started the whole thing. And it was because she, growing up as a queer youth, had no representation and only sort of envisioned herself having to form into like the Prince Charming masculine in order to be gay. So it's not even like, it goes so much deeper than just like, am I allowed to be gay or not? It's like also the way that you show up, whether or not you're participating in a trope, or if you're genuinely just like being yourself, right? Like there's a, what do they say? Like replication comes before mastery, right? So you sometimes have to replicate things to practice, to try them on before you realize what's true for you. And what you mentioned is that not having representation limits the amount of options you can try on. And all of a sudden we're in this environment, in this like age where you can see even the same person take 1,000 different shapes, right? Just by following one account. Like if I only followed you or I only followed Bunny, I would still have access to that sort of like beautiful spectrum of existence that that you both own in this way where you're like, however I show up, like my pronouns are this is me. And you can either choose to see me or not. But, it's like we don't get there. We don't get the bravery and the courage to come out in that way and to live out in that way without witnessing other people doing it safely and surviving.
Yeah. A friend of mine said this to me yesterday. He said by being a candle, you can then light other candles around you. But it first takes that one candle. And he was referencing living authentically. And what I love about what you said is that I've experienced personally. So when I first came out and realized, oh, I'm gay, like this hetero thing is not working for me. Because I had no queerness around me, I didn't understand that was an option. I just thought, maybe one day, like maybe when I'm married, I'll understand what love means. Or maybe when I have my first kid, I'll understand what love means. Or like, what's this love thing they talk about in movies? Maybe it's just like a magic fairy tale thing that happens. And so in my brain, until I saw this music video, so we had access to the internet, my generation, and that was revolutionary. I saw two women together and I was like, oh, option that didn't exist before now exists. Oh my goodness. And so in my queer life discovery of like, who am I and what am I doing? I took pictures when I was much younger. I was in high school.
Come back.
And constructing, art directing photographs to discover, trying on, exactly as you said, like, who am I? What do I mean in relation to this other thing? What role can I take on? Does this actually feel like me? And, as I came out to the queer community, I say all these things to say, like, I have long hair, I embody a very feminine way, and I was rejected by queer community. So not only was I rejected by heteronormative stereotypes and like, I don't fit in there and this doesn't feel right for me, but because I didn't fit into this, well, there's one man and one woman, or there's one masculine, one butch, and one feminine, I didn't fit into those tropes. A lot of the folks in the community were like, are you just trying this on? Are you bisexual? And I was like, wow, that's very interesting that this larger idea in homophobia has been internalized in our own community. And how does that show up? And again, to push back on that, my idea of pushing back on that looks like radical self-love, just showing up in all manifestations of gender. So having a beard and long hair, those conflicting gender structure ideas, like like since I was 12, I've been daydreaming about that idea, like having a beard. I've always wanted one because I just imagined that I would spend most of my days brushing it like a mermaid. I have no freaking clue why or where that came from, but that has just been in my brain. And the truth is, I don't want the daily maintenance of a beard. I just don't. But being able to, in the current day that we live, purchase one, take care of it when I need to take care of it, and then put it away when I don't want it. That works for me. And it helps me see myself in the world.
Yeah.
So that's radical self-love to me.
So important. I just read a quote yesterday. I think it was like, I forget who it was, but we were talking about the form that a poem takes and why is the form even important? And the quote is talking about the human body, actually. And it's talking about how, like, the structure of a thing informs its meaning, informs its relationship to the world. So your body and the way that you show up, a lot of people say that, like, I don't need to live out, or I can afford to just be closeted, or I don't need to do that self-exploration. I'm just going to go with what they gave me, and I don't want to try anything else on because they're so, like, afraid. You're actually missing out on your soul, because your soul doesn't come forward all the way inside of us unless we give it permission, because it's a vulnerable, intimate thing, right?
I want to interject, and it's also beneficial, reinforced for them to maintain that position that benefits them, right?
Yeah. And I think the quote was really trying to, like, push towards this idea of, like, your body is your soul. Like, the way that your body wants to exist, the messages that you receive from your vessel, what feels good to wear, what it feels good when someone calls you, like, all of these things are part of your soul. And so they not only do you deserve to have them be visible and deserve to have them live, but, like, it's imperative that you have, like, it's urgent, it's a must. We can't afford to not live, authentically, because the result is that we make poor choices. We end up not being happy and satisfied, right? And, like, we all know hurt people hurt people. How do we get to a place where we're not wounding in our relationship? So you don't cause harm in relationships if you're self-aware and you're living authentically, because you don't take things personally. You get to see what's yours and what's not, right? And it's like all of these ways in which just by being kind to yourself, appreciating your body and your identity and the way that you show up actually makes you a better person in terms of, like, the way you relate to the world. And I know one of the first things that we had Going Beyond the Lens had talked about, like, the whole premise of our group was we want to create the world that we want to live in. And I think that self-love as a topic, like, kind of, it really nailed that goal on the head, like, big check mark on that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying as far as self-actualization helps you show up in the world. So it's by showing compassion to yourself, self-love or radical self-love, you can then understand and relate and be compassionate towards others. That doesn't mean that you're going to eradicate all mistake making,
Totally.
But the likelihood of making a mistake and doubling down is less likely to happen because you're going to have compassion for yourself and realize, what would I want to do in this situation, or how would I want someone to treat me in this situation? That's compassion towards self, and then you can reflect that outwards.
Yeah, like,
you're right.
Just yesterday I saw, like, a lot of models sell reference photos, right, for other artists. We love collaborating with other mediums, and this artist had done a photo of mine without asking. It was a gorgeous watercolor. I didn't say it was. I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. Like, I really appreciate that you were inspired by my work. I'm not asking you to pay me right now, but I do just want you to know that I do charge. I traveled for 15 years, broke my body to make these images. They're really intimate, personal, and valuable to me. And that's why they inspire you. And I'm happy about that. But you need to reflect that value on me. And ask for stuff before you take from another artist, especially if you're not really remixing what they gave you and you're just sort of redoing it in another medium. Credit properly, right? And if they say that their work is for sale, just buy it. It's not a big deal. If you don't have the $7, be honest about that. And this guy made himself super aware, like, he outed himself as a cisgendered heterosexual male with the entitlement because he started freaking out at me, all because I sent this super kind message being like, hey, what you did is really beautiful and I super appreciate that, but this is actually my boundary. Would you please honor that in the future? That's all I said. And I got ripped to shreds. And normally I would have blocked this person. But I had been doing all of this self-love exercises, all this whole month, and I was like, wow, this person must really be hurting. And so instead, I turned it around and I said that to him. I was like, hey, I can tell that you're a white cis dude and you're used to getting your way. And I appreciate that. You need to understand that, like, I'm a single parent who's disabled, living in the middle of a pandemic, and charging $5 for you to use a piece of artwork that I traveled the world and broke my body for is not really a big deal. And, like, I need you to take that into account before you react nastily to me because, like, you know, you don't know. I could have just had a panic attack. I didn't. But I could have. And years previous, I might have. And it's just having spent a little bit of extra time cultivating that compassion and gentleness that I was able to witness the pain in him and respond to that instead of being defensive and acting like it was an emergency and I needed to like be like, F you, you're such an asshole, and block him. Because I could have done that too. But instead he apologized. He was like, oh my God, I'm such an asshole. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, I didn't have to say it.
Yeah. There's something powerful about having the person realize their mistake because they're more likely to correct and change in the future and build awareness rather than doubling down on the other end. But I do want to say, like, this is a really powerful tool, and when time, space, and energy permits, it's really useful to use, and kind of something that you and I have talked about when we formed Going Beyond the Lens. That's the work that we're trying to take on. That's the world that we want to live in. And given time, effort, and energy, we choose to do that. It's not a requirement, but these are the results that it often can have, right?
Yeah, I think anything that gets me more connected with myself allows me to connect more in community and with other people safely in such a way that, like, I have many choices. I'm not just reacting. I have the space to respond. And I think that goes for, you know, knowing yourself, and self-portraiting even helps you in terms of, like, future collaborations. Like, if you've never modeled before and you pose for yourself and take some shots, you're more likely to be able to describe to a model in the future the emotions that you want and the poses that resonate with you because your body practiced and played in that arena. And so you have that connection now to yourself, and you can replicate that in other areas. So I think that, yeah, you're totally right. It strengthens the bonds, like, at the foundation. I think self-love is sort of like, we're noticing that it is really the foundation of the ability to exist in community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I remember a friend of mine a long time ago told me, if you observe the way someone responds when they make a mistake, it can indicate, not always, but it can indicate, you know, with other observations and nuances taken in as well, how a person has or doesn't have compassion for themselves. And if they do have compassion for themselves, then they're more likely to take ownership for a mistake. They're less likely to be resentful. They're more likely to have stronger boundaries and say what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah.
And if they can't show self-compassion, then that's kind of something that you should be aware of and understand that maybe that's a little gray territory, proceed with caution area. It's not a right or wrong. It's just how you choose to interact with that person, utilizing the observations that you've made.
I love how the ability, like, the more you let yourself show up and the more self-love you have, the more that you're able to make space for other people to show up, and the more that you're able to witness when there's something blocking them, you know, whether that's a pain or they think they're being judged, like they're feeling like something's projected on them and there's not, you know, there's so many different ways in which we're having the world press in on us and in on with shoulds in every direction. And I think self-love is like the antidote to shoulds in a very general sense. So I'm really excited to see, like, how people access that in different ways and in different mediums. So.
I can imagine. So after working in the space that I do, there's a lot of pottery that comes in, and a lot of the folks that work in the pottery medium say that it requires a lot of patience, and I'm sure that cultivating that patience is a form of self-love. So this is what I love about different mediums, is that I don't think in those structures or those frameworks. And when people share their process and their idea and where they were at point A to where they are at point B, it really helps me inform the decisions that I'm making or understand the nuances that, the structures that I'm working under, or the old beliefs that I don't want to operate, how they're arriving or, sneaking into new ways of behaving in the future.
Deprogramming. I love that.
Yeah.
Like you get to look at the, what's the analogy? They use the analogy of soul garden in coaching a lot. I really like that one, where it's like you do sort of just pop up in this bed of plants, and you're like, oh, half of this shit's already here, and I didn't plan it. I don't know how it got here. Somebody's telling me it's like necessary for me to live, but I don't really know. And how do we find out? Yeah. Like you have to get in there with your hands and sort of like pick and choose what you want to keep. And a lot of times through self-love and self-compassion, we're able to sort of like discover those like roots lodged in us, and we have a choice with what we do with it.
Yeah. I read a post recently, so I want to share this one thing, and then we can invite everyone to join us for our art share, because this is where we really dive in deep in the following event, which is the conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of times what comes up, I think, when a mistake is made or when a perceived mistake is made, is shame. And shame shuts down. So it shuts down any opportunity to grow, shuts down any opportunity to see it as a part of something, like a bigger piece. So a mistake isn't the end all be all. A mistake is simply a mistake. Like, it's the comma in a sentence. The and also is the important part, but I think shame turns it into a period rather than a comma. Yeah. And so that's something that self-compassion and self-love can really help eradicate. It turns that period into a comma so that there's an and also. So I recognize this mistake, and also I know and can identify what I will do differently in the future. Self-love and compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I feel like shame is like the underbelly of self-love. Like self-love is like the top, the part of that's like sunny and happy, and then like underneath of that is shame, and they can't exist in the same space. And so when you cultivate one, you naturally lessen the other. It's not even really like a huge leap or extra work that needs to happen. It's like just by falling in love with genuinely who you are and making space for that, the shame melts away, especially when you're able to do it in a public space, because shame is a public emotion. It doesn't come from you. It comes from your fear of being witnessed by somebody else. It's really hard to get rid of it in a social context too.
I would also say that it does serve a purpose. It's not completely terrible or like nothing is...
Right. No emotion is bad. They all have information.
Yeah, like shame to me helps me identify something. Like it's a construct where it could motivate me to make a change. Like if I feel shame, I didn't behave the way that I would like to behave in that situation, it can provide me an opportunity to say, I don't want to do that again, right? But oftentimes in overwhelming doses, shame can be like, I'm so embarrassed, I never want to go out again, and you completely shut down and you don't provide yourself with the opportunity to move forward. And so I want to eradicate the idea that shame only looks like that, and that it's terrible and awful, and we can't do anything with it, it's useless, and move it into the, maybe that didn't work for me.
If we had
I feel a little embarrassed by that.
It would function like that. I think it's just because our culture is so like hell-bent on shame. And Doug, I like that you're bringing up shame is often internalized and never processed. That is super true, especially when it comes to historical, like intergenerational trauma and shame that comes with, having ancestors that have participated in, making space for you to have a life, but it also meant that somebody else died. So there's blood on every single human's hands. And how do we get through, those feelings of overwhelming shame? And it's by remembering what the function of shame is, right? Which is to, as you mentioned, to catalyze something. Something has to change. And it might not be what you're doing. It might be how you feel or in your relationship to the past or whatever. But yeah, I like that call to action in terms of like witnessing shame, trying to find the value in that as being identified and processable so that you can learn from experiencing it. Thank you, Doc.
For sure. Yeah. Doug, that was a good ad. I love that. See, this is why community is so important. This is why we bring these art share events, because in a world that is invalidating in every capacity, every corner you turn, every billboard, advertisement, movie, TV show that you see, you're inundated in, you are wrong, you are not good enough, you are not worthy, and all these other invalidations. And community gives us the opportunity to really see each other and to exist in a way that feels authentic and real to who we are. So that's why it's super important. We need to get back to the root of things. Yeah. Given that, this Saturday, we have an event where we share in community with everyone, our art, and we talk about our process. And it's kind of a yin-yang situation where the artist gets to share a little bit about their art, and then the audience gets to reflect what they see, and we process work together, and we learn from each other. On every event, we get 12 slots to share 12 different artists' work. But don't fear, just because you don't make it into those 12 slots doesn't mean that your work won't be seen. We also send out a mailer with all of the other artists that weren't able to make it into that specific one. We do these once a month because they're community events, and we love seeing so much art. And frankly, the museums and galleries are closed right now, so this feels like a safe way to expose myself to new art. So I love that. And then the following, is it Sunday?
Yes.
We have a community conversation also on the topic of self-love. And that's where we really dive in and share our process to how does that show up, what have we learned. And I think that's it. What else?
I think that's it, yeah. Submit your art. We really want to see it. Everything is uncensored, so just be aware that you will see bodies. If you come, that's part of it. My battery is dying, so this is perfect timing. We're excited to see what submitted. Please go for any medium. You can write stuff, you can sing stuff, you can dance stuff, like literally anything could be art. We want to see it all. We even had clay figures last time. I loved that. So that was really cool. So yeah, we're super excited to see y'all. And oh yeah, the links are in all of our bios. So in the Going Beyond the Lens bio, in Roarie's bio, and in Buck's bio. Come find us.
Yeah. All right, see y'all there.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Roarie, and I will see y'all on Saturday.